The arena pulsed with raw energy, a cauldron of anticipation as the crowd roared for the clash that had been hyped for months. GROMDA 11 was no ordinary fight night. It was a spectacle of bare-knuckle brutality, where two titans would collide under the unforgiving lights. Balboa, the self-proclaimed king of knockouts, stood in one corner, his fists wrapped only in tape, knuckles gleaming like weapons forged for destruction. His reputation preceded him, a trail of shattered jaws and crumpled opponents, each fight a testament to his relentless power. Across the ring was GOAT, the embodiment of Polish grit, a man whose name carried the weight of a nation's pride. His broad shoulders and ironclad resolve made him a legend, a fighter who didn't just endure but thrived in the chaos of bare-knuckle warfare. The air crackled with tension as the referee signaled the start, and the crowd's roar became a deafening wave. Balboa moved first, his feet shuffling with the precision of a seasoned predator. He was lean, coiled like a spring, his eyes locked on GOAT with a hunger that bordered on obsession. His jab snapped out, a probing shot that tested the distance, but GOAT didn't flinch. The Pole stood his ground, his stance wide, absorbing the strike with a slight tilt of his head. He countered with a heavy right, the kind of punch that carried the weight of a sledgehammer. Balboa slipped it barely, his reflexes saving him from what could have been a fight-ending blow. The crowd gasped, already sensing the stakes. This wasn't going to be a dance. It was a war, and every strike was a declaration of intent. The first round was a chess match disguised as carnage. Balboa's speed gave him an edge, his fists darting in and out, peppering GOAT's guard with sharp, stinging blows. He aimed for the body, trying to sap the bigger man's strength, each punch a calculated investment in later rounds. GOAT, however, was unmoved. His eyes burned with focus, and his counters were vicious, each one a reminder that he could end the fight with a single clean hit. A left hook grazed Balboa's temple, sending a ripple of sweat into the air. The smaller man staggered but recovered, his grin defiant. He wasn't here to survive. He was here to conquer. As the bell rang, both fighters retreated to their corners, breathing heavily but unbroken. Balboa's coach barked instructions, urging him to keep moving to avoid the big man's power. GOAT's team was calmer, their words in Polish steady and measured, as if they knew their man was built for this. Grind. The crowd buzzed, dissecting every moment, their voices a chaotic blend of cheers and arguments. This was bare-knuckle fighting at its purest. No gloves, no mercy, just flesh against flesh and the will to stand tall. Round 2 exploded with renewed ferocity. Balboa, perhaps sensing the need to make a statement, came out swinging. He unleashed a flurry of punches, his fists blurring as they targeted GOAT's head and ribs. The Pole absorbed the onslaught, his guard high, but a sharp uppercut slipped through, snapping his head back. The crowd erupted, sensing blood. Balboa pressed forward, his confidence surging, but GOAT was no ordinary foe. With a roar, he planted his feet and fired back, a right cross that caught Balboa mid-step. The impact echoed through the arena, a sickening thud that silenced the crowd for a split second. Balboa's knees buckled, but he stayed upright, his pride refusing to let him fall. The exchange set the tone for the round. Both men traded blows with reckless abandon, their bodies slick with sweat and streaked with blood. Balboa's speed kept him in the fight, his ability to weave and dodge just enough to avoid GOAT's most devastating shots. But the Pole's power was undeniable. Every punch he landed seemed to shake Balboa's core, each one a test of the smaller man's resilience. A cut opened above Balboa's eye, a thin stream of crimson painting his face. GOAT's nose bled too, but he seemed oblivious, his focus unshaken. The bell rang again and the fighters parted, their chests heaving, their eyes still locked in mutual respect and defiance. The third round brought a shift. Balboa, bloodied but unbowed, began to adapt. He circled more, using the ring's space to frustrate GOAT's heavy swings. His footwork was masterful, a dance of survival that kept him just out of reach. When he struck, it was with precision, targeting the cut above GOAT's brow, aiming to widen it and impair his vision. The Pole growled, his frustration evident, but he was no brute. He adjusted, cutting off the ring, forcing Balboa into tighter spaces where his speed was less effective. A sudden left hook from GOAT landed flush on Balboa's jaw, and this time, the smaller man went down. The crowd leapt to its feet as the referee began the count. Balboa, dazed but defiant, clawed his way up at 8, his legs shaky but his spirit intact. GOAT charged, sensing the finish, but Balboa ducked under a wild haymaker and fired back with a desperate combination. The punches lacked power, but they bought him time, enough to survive the round. As the bell sounded, the arena was a sea of noise, fans chanting both fighters' names caught in the drama of a fight that was already legendary. In the fourth, Balboa's corner worked frantically to close the cut above his eye, their hands moving with practiced urgency. GOAT's team was methodical, icing his swollen hands and whispering strategy. When the bell rang, it was clear both men were feeling the toll. Their movements were slower, their punches heavier with exhaustion. Yet neither would yield. Balboa dug deep, finding a second wind, his fists snapping out with renewed venom. A straight right caught GOAT clean, rocking him back on his heels. For a moment it seemed the king of knockouts might live up to his name. But GOAT was a titan, for a reason. He absorbed the blow, his jaw set, and retaliated with a barrage that drove Balboa to the ropes. The smaller man covered up, weathering the storm, but the punishment was relentless. A body shot stole his breath and a follow-up hook sent him staggering. The crowd sensed the end, their cheers a mix of awe and dread. Balboa, however, was not done. With a primal yell, he surged off the ropes, landing a wild overhand that stunned GOAT. The Pole's legs wobbled, and for a fleeting second the impossible seemed possible. The fifth round was a testament to human endurance. Both fighters were battered, their faces swollen, their hands bruised from the unrelenting impact of bare knuckles. Balboa's cut had reopened, blood streaming into his eye. But he fought on, his heart carrying him where his body faltered. GOAT's power was still there, but his accuracy waned, his punches growing wilder as fatigue set in. The round was a brutal slog, neither man able to land the decisive blow. They clinched at one point, their bodies leaning into each other, not out of strategy but sheer exhaustion. The referee separated them and they continued, two warriors refusing to break. As the final round loomed, the crowd was on edge, knowing the fight was too close to call. Balboa's corner pleaded with him to stay sharp, to use his speed. GOAT's team urged him to find one clean shot, the kind that had ended so many fights before. The bell rang, and the arena held its breath. Balboa came out fast, his fists a blur, peppering GOAT with jabs to keep him at bay. The Pole stalked forward undeterred, his eyes searching for an opening. A minute in, he found it, a crushing right that caught Balboa on the chin. Balboa went down hard, the impact shaking. The canvas. The referee counted, and the crowd chanted, some for Balboa to rise, others for GOAT's triumph. At 9, Balboa stirred, his body screaming but his will unbroken. He stood, wobbling, and waved GOAT on. The Pole obliged, unleashing a final onslaught. But Balboa, the king of knockouts, had one last surprise. He ducked a haymaker and countered with a desperate uppercut that snapped GOAT's head back. The Pole staggered, and for a moment, the fight hung in the balance. The final seconds were chaos. Both men threw everything they had, their punches, sloppy but fueled by sheer determination. The bell rang and they collapsed into each other, too exhausted to stand alone. The crowd erupted, a tidal wave of sound that shook the arena. The judges deliberated as the fighters were tended to, their teams wiping blood and offering water. When the decision came, it was split, 2 judges for GOAT, 1 for Balboa. The Pole's hand was raised, but there were no losers in this fight. The aftermath was a blur of respect. Balboa and GOAT embraced, their rivalry forged into something deeper, a bond only those who've shared such a battle can understand. The crowd chanted their names not as rivals but as heroes. GROMDA 11 had delivered more than a fight. It was a story of heart, of 2 men who pushed beyond their limits and left everything in the ring.